coming up today as calls grow louder for an independent counsel to get to the bottom of a snowballing political bribery scandal. A second aide of the deceased tycoon at the heart of the case is detained over suspicions of trying to cover up evidence. With consumption and exports on the slide, the Korean economy grows in the 0% range for the fourth straight quarter in the first 3 months of the year. First, the US admits to accidentally killing an American and Italian held hostage by al-Qaeda in a military operation in January. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Friday, April 24th here in Seoul. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this morning, prosecutors investigating the bribery scandal surrounding the so-called Songwan-jong list detained another key suspect for emergency reasons late Thursday night. Lee Young-gi, the late businessman's chief secretary and a public relations director at Sung's company, Gyeongnam Enterprises, was arrested without a warrant over suspicions that he tried to cover up evidence. The move comes a day after prosecutors arrested Park Jun-ho, the former executive director of the company, on suspicions of destroying evidence. Officials say both Lee and Park have denied knowing anything about the bribery list during the interrogations. So, as we just heard, the prosecution's investigation is already in full swing, but the main opposition party leader, Moon Jae-in, has joined others in calling for them to get to the bottom of the scandal as quickly and as effectively as possible. Park Ji-won reports.
With the so-called Songwan-jong bribery list still riffling through politics, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy leader Moon Jae-in called for the appointment of special prosecutors to find out the truth behind the scandal, which involves several high-profile ruling Saenuri Party politicians.
Prosecutors should proceed with a prompt and tough investigation until the independent counsel team is appointed. The impartiality of the independent counsel team should also be guaranteed.
Speaking to reporters at the parliament on Thursday afternoon, Moon urged the ruling Saenuri Party and President Park Geun-hye to root out corruption once and for all, saying the opposition party is ready to cooperate. The ruling party has pointed out that the now deceased businessman behind the bribery list was twice pardoned for corruption by the liberal Roh Moo-hyun administration. In response, Moon, who was the former chief of staff to the late president, asserted that the Roh Moo-hyun administration is innocent.
I can assure you that there was no one at the presidential office during the No administration who received illegal money in return for giving those pardons.
Moon added that the 8 people listed on Sung's suicide memo, including current presidential chief of staff Lee Byung-gi, should resign from their posts and let the investigation take its course. Ruling Saenuri Party leader Kim Moo-sung later responded saying it's not right to pressure those named in the scandal to resign in case the investigation shows they are innocent. However, the scandal has hounded Prime Minister Lee Wan-gu into submitting a resignation after just 2 months in office. Lee was one of the people named in a note left by former businessman Songwan-jong, who committed suicide earlier this month while his company was being investigated for embezzlement in relation to a failed overseas energy project that was greenlit by the Lee Myung-bak administration. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And following the opposition leader's calls for a special probe into the bribery scandal and for the presidential chief of staff to step down, the presidential office says it's concerned the remarks could be an attempt to influence the prosecution's investigation. In Chile, the third stop of President Park's South America tour, her spokesperson said the president had urged the prosecution to exercise impartiality before embarking on her overseas trip. He added the president also said there's no reason to oppose a special probe if it helps to get to the bottom of the bribery allegations. The allegations made by a deceased businessman include some former and current political bigwigs close to the president. Now, before departing Chile for Brazil, the final leg of her South America tour, President Park Geun-hye spoke on the phone with the head of Korea's first Antarctic Research Institute. Thanking all 17 researchers for their hard work in frigid conditions, President Park asked An In-young, the King Sejong Station's principal research scientist, about everyone's health and general well-being, and said they mostly spend the winter season indoors, during which the wind chill drops to minus 40 degrees Celsius, but they try to stay as fit and active as they can. A day earlier, President Park discussed cooperating on Antarctic studies with Chilean President Michelle Bachelet. The Sejong Station, which first opened on Antarctica's King George Island in 1988, studies climate change and organisms' ability to adapt to cold temperatures. Russia's ambassador to South Korea has been sharing Moscow's thoughts on a range of issues with the local media here in Seoul. The envoy says he expects North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to travel to the Russian capital in a couple of weeks' time for a big war anniversary event. And he also raised the prospect of Russian investment in the two Koreas' joint industrial park. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will likely attend the Victory Day celebrations in Moscow next month. That's according to Alexander Timonin, the Russian ambassador to South Korea.
His participation was confirmed maybe through diplomatic channels, the details of which aren't always disclosed.
Russia has repeatedly said that Kim Jong-un will attend the May event, though Pyongyang has not made an official comment. President Park Geun-hye declined her invitation, citing a scheduling conflict, squashing hopes of a meeting between the two leaders. Speaking to reporters in Seoul on Thursday, Timonin hinted that Russian investment in the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex was imminent.
A lot of projects are underway. One of them was proposed by a Russian Korean. It has to do with food products. More information will be given once a deal is reached.
The Russian envoy said Seoul and Moscow are also in close talks about building a gas pipeline that would run from Russia across North Korea to South Korea. But he also reiterated Russia's opposition to the possible deployment of a U.S.-made missile defense system to South Korea.
We oppose the deployment of THAAD in regions close to Russia.
Timonin, who also served as the Russian ambassador to Pyongyang, urged the two Koreas to resume talks as soon as possible. He expressed hopes that the two countries will find ways to approach and work with each other. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, the South Korean economy rebounded in the first quarter of the year, but it's too early to get too carried away, as it was a modest gain, and sluggish consumption and exports point to a difficult road ahead. Shin Se-min reports.
The Korean economy grew 0.8% in the first 3 months of this year. That's a pickup from a 0.3% gain in the fourth quarter of 2014, but still firmly in the below 1% range for the fourth straight quarter. The Bank of Korea said Thursday a recovery in the housing market led the overall growth.
The Q1 GDP bump is attributed to a 7.5% increase in construction investments driven by residential housing projects, as well as improved domestic spending.
What's worrisome, experts say, is the figure on the exporting front, the country's traditional growth engine that showed no improvement.
The weaker Japanese yen and China's decreasing dependence on Korean products are denting Korea's outbound shipments. So it's important to breathe new life into consumer sentiment to prop up growth.
From a year earlier, Korea expanded 2.4%, marking the slowest pace of growth since the first quarter of 2013. The central bank said that the subtle first quarter rebound is a sign that the economy is on a recovery path, heading towards its estimate of 2.7% in the first half of the year. But analysts say that it's still too early to be relieved, as the pace of growth is just a step up from stagnation. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, as part of efforts to improve the dire youth unemployment situation here in Korea, the government has laid out a comprehensive set of measures for reforming the labour market. But, as our Kim Ji-yeon tells us, an umbrella union is against this plan and intends to lead a general strike against it starting today, Friday.
The conflict between the government and labor unions peaked after they failed to reach an agreement on key labor reforms earlier this month. The Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, the country's second-largest umbrella union, says it'll lead a nationwide strike starting Friday. The umbrella union expects around 70,000 participants on the first day and around 200,000 over the next several days. The strike is being held to protest the government's push for structural reforms in the labor sector, which calls for flexibility in the labor market.
The move will increase the number of irregular positions, making it easier for companies to lay off workers and lower wages. We've decided to strike as the government pushes forward with such reforms, despite failing to reach an agreement with labor unions.
The union is also calling for a minimum pay hike from the current $5 to just over $9. It also wants an end to the government's plan to reform the pension system for public servants. Calling the action an illegal strike, the government says it will not back down on its labor reform plans. The Ministry of Government Administration and Home Affairs says it plans to charge 20 or so union leaders with violating laws and codes of conduct concerning public servants. The Education Ministry says it'll take disciplinary action against the heads of schools that allow their teachers to participate in the strike. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, in some international news, the United States says 2 hostages, one a U.S. citizen and the other an Italian national, were accidentally killed by a U.S. drone strike on an al-Qaeda compound in Pakistan earlier this year, the White House says. 72-year-old Warren Weinstein, an American held by al-Qaeda since 2011, and Giovanni Loporto, a 39-year-old Italian held since 2012, were killed in a January operation in the border region of Afghanistan and Pakistan. U.S. President Barack Obama says the strike was authorized in the belief there were no civilians in the compound, but as Commander-in-Chief, he said he took full responsibility for the operation. U.S. officials believe Ahmed Farouk, an American who the White House says was an al-Qaeda leader, was killed in the same drone strike. Another American who had served as a spokesman for the terror network was killed in a separate operation in January. European leaders have agreed to triple the funds for the border operation that patrols the Mediterranean Sea in the wake of Sunday's shipwreck off the coast of Libya that killed more than 900 African migrants. Thursday's emergency meeting in Brussels was called to reverse last year's decision to scale down rescue operations in the area. The EU is also considering military action to stop migrants' deadly attempts to get to Europe by hunting down and destroying boats used by human traffickers. Following the talks, German Chancellor Angela Merkel said Europe's values and credibility were on the line over this crisis. However, experts and other groups say the plans are far too small in scale, questioning the effectiveness to prevent further disasters. Arirang TV has sealed yet another exchange deal with a South American TV network. The latest agreement with a popular Brazilian channel comes hot on the heels of a similar deal signed earlier this week with Peru's largest TV network. Our Park Hee-ju filed this report from Sao Paulo.
Adinang TV is taking greater strides to enter the South American TV market, adding Brazil to its list of partnership countries. Korea's global broadcaster has sealed an MOU with Brazils Hatchi TV that will explore opportunities for joint production, program, and personnel exchanges. Established in 1999, Hatchi TV is considered a relatively new player in the Brazilian TV industry, but is known for its creative contents aimed at younger viewers. It's also far-reaching, with the channel's transmission range covering 85% of the country. Adinang TV and Hatchi TV, which means network in Portuguese, will also focus on exchanging contents on the business front and on ICT trends.
We believe Asia is the continent of future where tradition and technologies coexist. We are particularly interested in Korean TV contents like K-pop, which is taking the world by storm. We are also eager to exchange news coverage, which will enhance our journalistic scope.
President Park Geun-hye's visit to the country this week is also expected to pique the Brazilian people's interest in Korea. There are thought to be around 250,000 fans of Hallyu, or the Korean wave in Brazil, accounting for a quarter of all Hallyu fans in South America. Arirang TV's latest exchange deal with Brazil's fifth largest broadcaster will further expand its reach to the rising number of K-pop and Korean culture fans here on the South American continent. Park Hee-ju, Arirang News, Sao Paulo.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a wonderful weekend, and thanks, as always, for watching. We do hope to see you at the same time on Monday. Goodbye.